My name is Olga Kovtun. I'm from Ukraine, from Kiev. I was born in West Ukraine, in Rivne, but the last 10 years I lived in Kiev. I'm a journalist, writer, author. I lived with my family in Buenos Aires for 5 years, and it was actually the time where I passed from teenagehood to my adulthood. Like I came there when I was 14 and I left when I was 19 and ready to go to university. I discovered, for example, Victoria Ocampo, a famous writer, author and publisher in Argentina who created the famous magazine El Sur. Then I started learning more and more about the feminist movement, watched lots of feature films. I really liked them. And I understood that it was something that it was a huge work done by women in the past for us. And this freedom we have because it wasn't just granted for us like this. Many generations of women really fought for this to become one of the basic rights right now. I learned about Ukrainian feminism as well. Because I was wondering, if this was happening in Argentina and this in France, but what was going on back in Ukraine? And I found out that actually in the 20s and 30s, there was a huge feminist movement in Ukraine. That's when I discovered Solomia Pavlichko, one of the most prominent Ukrainian feminists and authors in this independent time of independence in Ukraine after 1991. She, as a literary, she was researching theory of literature from the feminist approach. And she did quite a revolutionary work because when she was writing one of her most famous books, Research, she was exploring our writers, male writers from the Ukrainian canon, the same Shevchenko, Franko, Kozyubinsky, and others. But she was writing about them as humans, not as some traditional icons. So I was very happy to have this possibility to research, to write, and to get published. And what made me the happiest is when you get the response from an audience and when people write you back like, we read your article, it was so good, or wow, I didn't know this personality existed in our history. So since 2016, little by little, I've been publishing culture and political pieces. And now after the Russian invasion in Ukraine started in February, like the first few months, I was completely engaged in this media type of work because from one side, I was helping to communicate with the Spanish-speaking media. So I had to communicate a lot with journalists from Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, doing this direct communication on TV, online. And it was very hard, but at the same time, I felt like this is the minimum I could do right now, being so far away. Like I couldn't be physically in Ukraine, but I could use my professional skills to raise awareness. I don't know, maybe if I wasn't a mother, I wouldn't go abroad, probably. Maybe I would just have gone to a safer place in West Ukraine. But my main preoccupation was I didn't want my child to experience war. Of course, nobody in the government told us directly, you need to evacuate right now. They didn't do this. But if you read the headlines, if you just analyze what's going on in the world, when you see the news that there's 100,000 troops near the border, and it doesn't look like some kind of military exercise at all. So, of course, I was just going in the subway, and all my thoughts were about if suddenly something happens right now, how much time will I need to get to kindergarten to pick my child? Will we be able to escape? How will the roads be open? We all know that the experiences we face in our childhood, even when we were just very, very little human beings, like 3, 4, 5 years old, they really impact us for life. And there might be consequences in 10 and 20 years, psychological, mental. And it happens everywhere, in every part of the world where events like this happen, unfortunately. Like kids, they just want to live their life happily. They may not understand what's going on politically, but of course they feel stressed, they feel traumatized. And I think our responsibility as parents, as adults, as teachers is to protect them. The fact that so many Ukrainians are now facing this destiny that you are from Europe, but you need to escape, to flee your country for another safer place. Like in 2022, for many it seemed something surreal, like you were living the best life in your country where everything was fine. Well, we have a war started in 2014 when Donbass was invaded, but it was only just this part of Ukraine invaded by Russia, and there were like constantly battles going on, but the rest of the country like illusionally lived the normal life. So nobody expected that one day there are gonna be airstrikes everywhere around the country, and people from all Ukraine suddenly understood those displaced from Donbass who came to Kiev, to Lviv like a few years ago and told their stories about what happened, because now every Ukrainian knows how it is. I have so much respect towards women in Ukraine, like from both parts. Those who left the country with their kids, like me, and many of them had to start their life from zero. Like their kids go to schools and kindergartens in the countries where they possibly don't speak the language. It's everything totally new. Some women are without jobs, so they kind of feel the need to support their family from zero, and they're looking for jobs, they're working hard. Also, there are lots of women who, for different reasons, decided to stay, mostly because they don't want to separate from their husbands and they don't want their kids to live without their father for a long time. And they're struggling at home as well, because apart from all the political issues and economical, they live under danger every day because they don't know what's going to happen. Every person has a big story behind his decision, because sometimes we can meet a person and don't even realize what hell his or she's been through. Like people already lost their colleagues, their friends, their family members at war. It happens every day. And thousands and millions of people feel just so connected to their land that they don't even imagine themselves living. And they understand that to win the war, they need to stay and continue doing something. That's why especially now the volunteer movement is so strong all around Ukraine and abroad as well. So it's like a huge invisible network of millions of people donating, raising money, buying things, transporting things, helping to the army, doing the humanitarian aid, looking for partnerships. And it happens in every field, in the military field, in the cultural, informational, economic, IT. So I think this is like a huge new reality we experience right now. And under such circumstances, when everybody's traumatized, even those who left and those who stayed there, especially those who witnessed war crimes or what's worse, became victims of this, they all have their own story.